Alright, let's start the video. I do apologize, I've been rather late, but I've got some work to do, so I've got priorities other than the videos. I do apologize. So let's talk about today's video regarding war and liberty. Now, starting off, I have addressed some of these points in the past. Indeed, with many of my more recent videos that is the case. But for this one, I would like to consolidate my points and explain them effectively so you can understand. Now, when it comes to war, it's a state of conflict between individuals or groups. So, for example, the Mexican-American War was between the United States and Mexico. Gang wars are between two gangs, and you can even have wars between two individuals. If two people start fighting over an extended period of time, yes, that is still a war, even if it's just two individuals who got rowdy. And so given that, we naturally have an understanding of what war is. And to violate the rights of others is a inherent conflict between two parties. This thus means that it is a war. If you, for example, violate the natural rights of another individual, you are effectively engaged in a war with them. And so, any oppression done by the state towards its own citizens is a conflict, and a war by extension. Since violating another's rights is itself an act of war, and the state has engaged in such, it thus becomes a war between the state and the individuals in question, and all others falling under that state's jurisdiction who are affected by said laws and said oppression. States which oppress their people are thus in a perpetual state of war, which, if world peace is to be achieved, must be defeated. Their governments must be overthrown or otherwise controlled by another organization for the express purpose of maintaining the liberty of individuals. And so, if we do want world peace, liberty must necessarily be defended, for it is a prerequisite to any such peace. A lot of time when people say, I want world peace, they think of governments stopping wars, stopping fighting between each other, or they think no more terrorism. Even if you combine them, that is not true world peace, because a world peace built on allowing tyrannies to tyrants to continue ruling is itself not peace. It is still allowing war, just limited war between states and their own people. It is thus a false peace, a lie, and should not be tolerated by any measure, for any measure and any method. I cannot stress that enough, and I do apologize if I sound confused on that. But to put it more bluntly, so long as we allow certain countries to continue oppressing their people, like, for example, North Korea, we are necessarily allowing them to continue a war between themselves and their own people. And to allow such a thing is inherently wrong and goes against the very idea of world peace. If you want true world peace, there are a lot of governments that need to go. And naturally, of course, with that said, there are some countries that are less peaceful than others, and some that are more, but are still in a perpetual state of war. In such cases, sure, some methods can be taken that are peaceful actions, reform, but it gets harder and harder the more extreme the action. And so you cannot argue for just wars because the war has already begun. There is no question of justice at that point. It is merely a matter of how the war ends. All are necessarily affected by a war because we all interact and suffer or benefit from actions taken in war. And so, do not think that this is some isolated thing to a few areas. It is connected to all areas, and we are necessarily impacted, both due to the fact that others make certain choices which lead to certain results as a consequence of said wars, but also just in general through trade and other actions. Plain and simple, war is necessarily a deal for every human who lives. And so, from that, the protection of liberty comes to us as the only conclusion. It is what must be done to prevent this, to finally end war. Could we theoretically end war? I mean, it's possible. Very difficult, but possible. However, it will require a lot of concerted effort and a lot of actions taken to ensure that such a thing comes about. You want to know why I believe in hegemony and imperialism? This is why. It is the only way to protect liberty while simultaneously reducing war. That I can see, at least. And I do hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to disagree in the comments. Goodbye.